Good evening to you all. It's lovely to see so many familiar faces here tonight and so many new ones too. I'd like to start by thanking Jo McAllister and Martin Jones from BDP for presenting me with the prize last year, and how honoured I feel that I could be part of this ongoing tribute to Jo Yeates. I'd also like to thank the tutors who put in a tremendous amount of work, enthusiasm and effort into the course, making evenings like this possible for us all to enjoy. For those of you who don't know me, my name is David Bailey, and I enrolled in the course in 2010, going on to complete my postgraduate diploma in 2014. And since then I've been working at the Environmental Dimension Partnership in Cirencester, predominantly involved in strategic landscape planning and design. For me personally, I wanted to use the prize to explore an area of landscape that has always fascinated me. I feel that memory, landscape and people are all interconnected, and we are the landscape and the landscape is us. It is something that we all share in common. From the outset, I realised that this is a difficult subject area to approach. So many have written, explored and lived out ideas connected with memory and the landscape. Eventually, I realised this subject area is best illuminated by story, passion and life. My appreciation and passion for landscape feeds into my everyday approach. And I realised that this connection stemmed from a bank of memories I formed during my childhood, adolescence and adult years. Again, something that we can all relate to. I've always been captivated and fascinated by the power and the fragility of the human mind and how little we still know about it. Memory is a brain-wide process, and this is crucial when considering how the primitive part of the brain requires stimulation through the five senses: sight, audio, smell, taste and touch, all combined ensures a stable balance. A combination of senses leads to clearer and longer lasting memories. Interaction with our surroundings improves our ability to remember more clearly. Even so, I believe these can be split in a social sense: universal memory and personal memory. A personal memory cannot be comprehended in the same way by another person or another individual. When interacting with nature, a personal memory is formed using our senses, opposed to a universal memory, such as watching something on a screen, which only utilises sight and sound, or a major occurrence or event that we all remember collectively. It is important to identify, even if we share an event collectively, we will all feel it in a different way. During this experience, I would like you to have an open mind and form your own views and opinions to reflect, consider and digest. Ultimately, I wanted to create a piece of work that you could take away with you memorably and physically. This will make it possible for you to share it with others later on. This feeds into my theory that something physical that you can see, feel, smell, hear and possibly taste, not that you'd want to, all combined can evoke a strong recall of memory rather than something purely visual. Now, in a moment I will show you a short film. The purpose of this film is to retrace and explore my connections with landscape, but more importantly, with the hope that every one of you here will be able to relate in some way. I would like you to explore your own memories during this, whether they be happy or sad. First and foremost, think of your memories in relation to the landscape and how that forms a firm foundation for them to be remembered by. A World War I poet, Edward Thomas, considered interconnection between humans, the landscape, memory, and the human heart. He said, "We wear the landscape in the sense beneath our feet and in the sense how we carry it upon ourselves, etched into our minds or within ourselves." It is interesting how we are affirmed and scattered by the landscape. Our minds, moods, imagination and identities are influenced by what we see, hear, smell, feel and taste once again. The way landscape feels influences our feel towards it. It is not only its physical appeal, but also in the way that it prompts us to consider. Time is etched into its visible fabric, offering an adventure for our mind to wonder of the heritage and the stories it holds. Something that is truly fascinating is pathways within the landscape. If we imagine those who have followed, experienced and created them. These carriageways hold thousands upon thousands of memories formed by previous generations. These memories are reignited by those living and those who consider the footsteps which have worn the corridor for others to follow. An author and philosopher, Robert Macfarlane, considers a similar theory. He said, "Today a buzzword is ecosystems and how they provide for us. One of the things they offer is a metaphor, figuring ourselves to ourselves. Paths offer a means of reaching a certain destination, but also paths will stretch as far as we are prepared to walk. Pathways run through the landscape as much as they channel through human beings. These paths derive from a set starting point. Like past generations, the landscape echoes memory. Certain elements may begin to decay, and one day their existence will be forgotten, with nothing left to orchestrate a question or a memory." This film aims to reinforce some of these theories and ideas.
Think about all those things.
I've decided to travel back to Beddgelert, which is situated in the Snowdonia National Park, North Wales. This place holds so many cherished memories, all connected to this rugged landscape in which Beddgelert is cradled. When we are young, we don't treasure moments or really know how to appreciate them. This may be because we have little to compare them to, and the lack of responsibility, which inevitably follows us with age. In essence, the formalisation of strong positive memory during childhood may be the most crucial in determining who we are and our mental and physical well-being later on in life. I make a conscious effort to travel back here on an annual basis, both to reconnect with my favourite landscape in the UK, but also to refresh and revive memories that I have lived. This in turn gives me the opportunity to add more at the same time. Before visiting this year, I'd read a lot of prose and poetry directly relating to memory, and I felt that this influenced my perception of Beddgelert and how I viewed it this time round. So much so, I decided to write my own piece of poetry in order to convey the vivid experience. When visiting the first day, I was met by beaming sunshine. Light hitting the water would glint like freshly cut diamonds. I could feel the warmth on the back of my neck, and see shadows cast by objects in the landscape, outstretched and wanting to detach themselves from their captors. The dragon was still there where I'd left him, sat on his pedestal outside the carving shop, looking as magnificent as he first did when he appeared 16 years ago. As often happens in Wales, the following day changed. In the morning I was met by the repetitive pattering rain hitting the tightly stretched material of my tent, and my feet outstretched in the porch area had become damp and cold. The landscape had taken on a different form from the previous day, the mountains absorbed by a dense grey cloak of cloud, providing a beautiful adaptation in character and atmosphere. Small windows drifting in the wind would reveal glimpses of what the cloud was so desperately trying to hide. The river that had been tumbling the day before was now frothing in a psychotic rage, smashing and crashing between the rocks, which were trying to keep their heads above water. Now, rather than the back of my neck being lashed by rays of the sun, it was wet and chilled, with droplets clinging on to each individual hair like a heavy summer's dew. As I set off for a day's walking, I decided to let the rivers guide me down through the valley. When walking along the valley, the steep-sided slopes with lichen and moss-covered trees daringly clung onto the mountainside. The further I walked, only a couple of features revealed a hint of civilization. A road that meandered its way through the valley, flanking the river's edge, and a lightly eroded pathway straddling the adjacent side. There were moments that I would stand in total awe, watching the water cascades fall into the pools below. The swelling and bubbling would almost look like the water was at boiling point. Eventually, I find myself on my own parapet, off the beaten track. Maybe I am the first person to sit in this position, possibly the first person to make a memory at this exact location and bearing. A view is a memorable moment for many. It is a time that our brain can gorge itself, satisfying its hunger.
Don't think about all those things you feel. Just be glad to be here.
Now, many of us have a place which we require to picture past memory. It could be your back garden, the Scottish Highlands, the Isle of Wight, that green space that flanks the urban settlement, or the view out of your toilet window. Being what it may, we all have a place that we hold in our hearts and enables us a means by which to escape. What I hope to convey is that we consciously value memory. Memory is connected with the landscape and that is why in recent years regeneration has been on the rise. At this point, I think it is important to ask, does this appreciation need to be instilled in us from an early age? Projects retain and restore historical assets, preserving memory so that it is not lost and can be enjoyed by others. It could be the landscape that where we live and where we grow up strongly shapes our attitudes towards the natural environment, feeding into our subconscious and making us want to explore further afield to replicate, reject, replace, regenerate or recreate. This in turn forms a greater bank of memories with immediate association to the landscape. It is important to reflect on why we need natural landscape and the wilderness and why it is crucial to our existence. Landscape feeds into our psychology and our ability to imagine, providing us with opportunities to reflect and how we think about ourselves. Exploring this further, I considered the idea of technology versus memory and landscape. During my journey, I began to think, landscape seemed to be ingrained and of such value 100 years ago. And this was clearly evident in the poetry that I reviewed. It was a means of escape and rehabilitation for many. At this point, I'd like to suggest that my generation is possibly becoming less attached to the landscape and the natural environment. Yes, many may say that is not the case. I go camping with my friends. That's nature, isn't it? I woke up with a steaming hangover, but I was in my natural environment. But are we going out on our own with the sole purpose in mind to interact, absorb, and focus? So what primarily could be the cause of this shift, a potential detachment? Could it be possible that technology is causing a shift from memory and reality? At this present time, children and young people today seem to be more fixated with trends, technology and social networking, where many will find themselves playing, thinking and living their lives in a technological fantasy rather than reality. Radio 4 commented on this issue of a growing disconnection by us always wanting to remain connected in a technological sense. And this is becoming a greater aspect of our lives at the best of times, and it's impossible to escape. A landscape architect called Mary Scapone said, "We are memories, and memories form who we are as people, a web of thoughts, feelings, relationships that make us who we are. Simply like memories of heritage enable cultures to be clearly defined. Technology is mainstream and generally generic, with little diversity to what it offers. And by that I mean, what will it offer future generations in terms of heritage? Does a smartphone enable us to imagine? The excessive use of technology could essentially impact on the way we develop as individuals. This is where the uncertainty lies in regards to potential detrimental impacts it could have in the way we communicate, interact and think. A sensory study by Kalubi and Robinson explores this idea that technology can be helpful for a child's development. However, it is important to think computer games do not enable that stimulation which exploration of the real natural environment can afford. In essence, the meaning of place and memory may take on another form, or not hold the same stature as it has for past generations. The thought that comes into my mind is that we still need to learn how to survive in a changing world, making conscious efforts to strike a balance, as mentioned earlier. Not so long ago, we would communicate in real life and in person rather than through a digital network. A busier way of life has created an influx in the need to use social media as a way of communication. It could be considered that this is altering the way in which we function physically and psychologically. Are the likes of social media desensitising us and exposing us to what we may once not have been subjected to? I'm sure we can all relate and say there's been a moment in our lives where we have felt fulfilled. We have produced something physical and overcome a challenge. My question is, will this start to become less important for the younger generation, or will it change altogether? The next level of computer games may enable stimulation of the senses, making the experience feel real. With the world at our fingertips, we are bombarded with the latest trends, technology and media. If we don't chase this, we feel left behind. It is not a case of condemning technology. I just think that we do not fully yet understand its gravity. It is also important to note that we have not all abandoned landscape. In fact, many people are partaking in outdoor activities and highlighting the needs and benefits of nature. With the increasing population, we need to focus on achieving a balance which moves us forward as human beings. It would be arrogant of me to say that technology is a demon and we should cease to use it completely. I simply think it should be moderated. And we are the generation who need to consider this for ourselves and the next. So this leads me on to thinking about how landscape-led design can play a positive role in society, helping to feed into the younger generation's subconscious. If we are not physically stimulated, for example, in terms of experience placed physically, this could lead to a gradual deterioration of our natural senses. As spatial designers, and anyone for that matter, I feel we have a responsibility to explore as much as we possibly can, enabling us to create places with meaning and substance by interacting with the natural environment first, before we design, so we can recall on the entire sensorial experience and hopefully replicate this for others. Though it may be considered contradictory by some, I believe this is something that must be experienced rather than learnt. When is the best time to experience the natural landscape so that it becomes part of our inner spirit, giving us the urge to share it with others and keep on experiencing it ourselves? We should be providing a catalyst to ensure the development of rich, positive memories, which I believe one of the best ways to do is through landscape. Now, I want to raise a final question. Are we heading to a point in time where we are no longer forming substantial memories connected with the landscape? Should we be designing with a stance to create places which are tailored for memory creation? Now, at the outset of this presentation, I stated that I wanted you to take a tangible experience home with you. So if each of you could take the box which was placed on your seat and open it, you will find a few items to stimulate your senses. Easy. The content of the box provides an opportunity for you to recall this evening by. Rather than the sweet parchment paper or rosemary, I think the tile is the most significant item. I wanted to cast a memory for each of you to take away, in the hope that it would prompt you to think of this evening and talk to others about it. I would like to thank everyone who's come along tonight and trust this film and presentation has evoked thought and consideration. And I would now like to welcome any questions the audience may have. Thank you very much.